Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's presentation as part of the Industry Insight webinar series. The topic this time is Service of Process, a workflow that works. Speaking today will be Jared Correa from LOMAP. Jared is the Assistant Director and Senior Law Practice Advisor for LOMAP, Law Office Management Assistance Program in Massachusetts. Before joining LOMAP, Jared managed CLE publications and the Casemaker research engine for the Massachusetts Bar Association. He's been a practicing lawyer in small firms where he mostly focused on personal injury, real estate, and disability law. Jared is a regular contributor to local and national legal publications, including Attorney at Work, where you can find his monthly column entitled Managing. Jared is the author of the American Bar Association publication Twitter in 1 Hour for Lawyers. He is the co-host of the podcast The Legal Toolkit on Legal Talk Network and is featured on a quarterly podcast at Solo Practice University. Jared also presented at ABA Tech Show 2013 on remote access and social media marketing. The Industry Insight webinar series is hosted by the ABA Legal Technology Resource Center. To stay updated on upcoming webinars or view previous videos, visit ambar.org/industryinsight. You can also stay updated on legal technology news through our blog, www.lawtechnologytoday.org. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll now begin the webinar.
Thanks, Chelsea. I appreciate it. And if you're out there, you can just give a slow clap to Chelsea Barron from the ABA, who does a really great job with these webinars, and I appreciate all her help. And thanks to the ABA Legal Technology Resource Center for, again, having me. This webinar is partly sponsored by Abacus Data Systems, so I'll tell you a little bit about Abacus in the middle of this presentation. But today I plan on doing sort of a large-scale overview of calendar management, docket management, and then we're going to talk about some specific places where you can streamline the process in your law firm. We're going to do a hard stop at 2:30, and I'm going to try to squeeze everything in then so you can ask all your questions. So get your good questions ready, and we'll go from there. And if folks are interested in finding out more about me, or if they have any questions that don't get addressed in this webinar, our website is masslomap.org, masslomap.org, and you can find out ways to contact me there. But thanks for listening in. So first things first, there's a lot of competition in the modern practice of law. I know. I'm not telling you anything I don't know. Anything you don't know. There are a ton of lawyers who are competing with you for clients in specific practice areas in your geographic area, and you have to have different ways to sell yourself that are different from what other lawyers are doing. You know, zealous advocacy, the scales of justice on your website, that doesn't necessarily cut it anymore. While it would be tremendous to have a business card that turned into a sponge when you put it in the water, or if you were a divorce attorney, if you had a business card that ripped in two, that would certainly be delightful. But there are different ways that you can differentiate yourself from other lawyers. And one of the ways I talk about is technology. Lawyers who use the right technology in their practice to get things done are essentially more efficient than their competitors. That means your clients are going to be happier. You're going to have time to market your business more effectively. You'll hopefully be able to squeeze in more clients than you would otherwise. And you'll just appear to be someone who manages their firm in a much more effective way. And that helps from a marketing standpoint, not only with respect to clients that you could get, those potential clients, but also clients who have used you, who can then tell people that they would refer to you. Not only was this lawyer very good substantively, they were also fast, efficient. They stayed in contact with me. I was able to collaborate with them in a really easy way that I understood, that was intuitive to me. And all that stuff is helpful from a general marketing standpoint. Now, in addition to using the right technologies, and that's going to depend on what your specific firm needs are, one of the ways you breed efficiency is by running your task management effectively, installing processes and workflows within your firm, so that what you do sort of becomes more rote. At least the basic task management tools. Obviously, as an attorney, the way you make your money is handling thorny problems. So researching, drafting unique documents, but the things surrounding that process, like scheduling appointments and meetings, making sure that you're keeping in touch with clients the way you should be, dealing with workflows on specific cases, that's all stuff you should be able to manage in a rote fashion, so that it's plug and play. And I'll talk a little bit about what I mean when I say these things. But speed, efficiency, the use of effective technologies, the ability to collaborate with clients in an effective manner, those are all sales pitches that law firms have traditionally not used for clients and potential clients. So let's talk briefly about calendar management and task management. You want to have a way to be able to assign tasks to cases and persons. So you want to have a system in place so that, let's say you're an immigration attorney. There's an immigration case of a standard type that you take on. Say you handle visas for businesses. Now, you're experienced. You do enough work in that area that you know that there are like 10 or 12 things you have to do on that case every single time, or that type of case every single time. So those tasks get into your calendar. And if you're using different systems, like if you've got an email calendar, case management system calendar, and there are other ways you're sharing information with your staff people and with your associates or with your partners, you have to make sure that people have access to that information across those various platforms. And you have to make sure that where appropriate, those platforms are synced. Because the last thing you want to do is be adding tasks in 5 different systems. You want to do something once and then have it take effect everywhere that you need it to take effect. And that's an important thing because lawyers waste a lot of time doing multiple entries of similar data, especially if they don't have a way to sync their systems appropriately. I'll talk more about this, but the other big piece on the task management side is, as I said before, lawyers are paid to be creative. That's why clients are paying you large sums of money to handle their work. So you've got to figure out what's delegable and what is not. Take a look and see on a particular case type, again, what it is that the lawyer should be doing and what it is that the staff or the associate should be doing. If you can do that, you can maximize your time and effort, and you can take on more clients because you're focused in what you're doing. And everybody who's involved in that case is doing their job. You don't have a lawyer overreaching and doing paralegal work. You don't have a paralegal overreaching and attempting to do lawyer work. And a good way to get a handle on this is take a look at the last 10 cases you did in a particular category and see how the work was handled, how it was split out. Figure out who should be getting what work and delegate it appropriately. And that's one clear way you can make yourself more efficient. Now, related to tasks, but not necessarily the same thing, are checklists. And at this point, probably most attorneys, most business people know about Atul Gawande's book, The Checklist Manifesto. And if you haven't read it yet, you should. It's a good and interesting read. Now, when you pick it up, you'll see that the theory of the book is that even for professionals, checklists help to avoid simple errors and simple issues of malpractice, or simple errors that turn into issues of malpractice. And the example given in the book is a doctor who leaves a sponge in a patient during a surgery. Well, if he had a checklist, and part of that checklist was remove all sponges following surgery, stuff like that maybe doesn't always not happen, but is less likely to happen. And the same thing for lawyers. If you create a checklist of the things you need to do in any particular case, including checklists related to law practice management, you're less likely to make those simple errors that can lead to problems. And for folks who are experienced especially, this is really advantageous. If you're a new attorney, you're maybe struggling to create a checklist because you don't necessarily know how to run through a case. But if you're an experienced attorney, it's very easy to write a checklist. It's just a matter of sitting down, putting it together, and then you can automate it. So now, how do you automate these things? Well, you can create what are called workflows, which are sort of built-out checklists. So the way a workflow works is it's an aggregation of tasks. So like I said before, you've got your immigration case, a particular type of visa, let's say a business visa. And you know that on any of those cases, you have to do 10 things. So what you do is you list those 10 tasks out, and you create what is essentially a workflow. You put those tasks in order. You add time frames to those tasks. Now, if you're using the right systems, one thing you can do is for every similar case type you have, you select that workflow and add it to the case. So instead of creating 10 tasks, you're clicking one button and arraying those tasks and attaching them to the case with one click. And that's tremendously advantageous. Not only is it helpful because it's not going to take you too long to do that, it's also helpful because it's going to attach to the case directly, and you're less likely to miss important details because you'll be reminded of those details. So like the doctor who inadvertently leaves a sponge in a patient, you're now the lawyer who's avoiding missing an important deadline, missing a status conference because you forgot to calendar for it. And there are also softwares that will be able to help you produce some of this deadline information. So you could use softwares that would allow you to produce deadline information, pulling from court rules and statutes. And you could also create some workflows yourself as well related to law practice management. So there are a lot of options here, but putting together checklists and workflows are really helpful. Now the other piece of this is it's great to have all this information in place. It's great to have tasks, task sets, workflows attached to your cases, but you got to know about them at the same time. So it's important to create ticklers and reminders within your calendar system. So if you've got a brief that's due, let's say 3 weeks from now, well, how are you going to parse that out? What does the workflow look like for that? So maybe you create a reminder that you need to start your research 2 weeks out. First draft done, a week and a half out. Second draft done and up to a partner 2 weeks out. Final draft done 2 days out. And then day of, you send in the motion. You could break down a number of tasks like that. But the trick is to remind yourself to do it. Most attorneys are worried about blowing statutes of limitations. A lot of attorneys are worried about missing court dates. But those self-imposed deadlines are really important to keep track of as well, because it keeps you on pace to continue to do what you have to do. So add those ticklers, have those reminders pop up, and then actually follow through on what you're doing. Again, it's great to have workflows, but you need to be aware of them. And it's great to be aware of them, but you also need to have to do the work that goes into that. So that's important. Now, the other thing here is if you're not a solo attorney, you're going to be working with other people. So the key is, how do you keep those people apprised of what it is you're doing? And how do they know what their task is in relation to these cases? Well, we talked about one way to do it, which is to assign tasks. But then you need to have notifications for whether or not someone's doing what they're supposed to be doing to give you an opportunity to follow up. So step one is informing people of what they need to do, make clear expectations, and add that to a calendar so that there's a time-sensitive component to those tasks. And then actually follow up on what your folks are doing to make sure that they're doing it when they should be and that things are getting done on time. There are a lot of different ways to do that, but even with a basic calendaring app like an email-attached calendaring app, you can do that. But keeping people informed, contacting them, reaching out to them is important. Not every task is going to be fairly straightforward. Sometimes you're going to have large projects to do, especially for like litigation attorneys, medical malpractice attorneys. You're going to have large-scale projects to manage, potentially with multiple people involved. Now, managing large projects is a little bit of a different game, and it's important to make sure that you create milestones for those projects, and those should be time-sensitive as well. It's like workflow on steroids. You have to figure out how the data gets loaded for these projects. You have to figure out who's going to be attached to which tasks. You want to figure out who's managing the enterprise, who's going to be following up with certain people, what the hierarchy is within the program. And then it's important to keep those milestones in place. Sort of ticklers, but on a broader scale. So step one, step two, step three. And then if it's a large enough project that's going to be happening for a long period of time, it may be valuable to engage in meetings at stages. So meetings at milestones versus meetings at the end of the project, just to make sure things are on track. But that's part time management component, part calendar management component. But when you're thinking about big projects, you want to manage them in a slightly different way based on some of the things we already talked about. Now, there are two big advantages to managing your calendar appropriately and your tasks appropriately. The first is it's a great hedge against malpractice because it's going to ensure that you're more on top of your cases and your work than you otherwise would be. Now, when I started in practice, I remember this well. I spent a lot of Saturday mornings going into the office, looking up paper files, and just doing a file review, just to make sure we weren't missing anything. Now there's technology available that can help you to automate these reminders. So assuming you put everything in correctly into a system, you're going to be able to stay on top of things a little bit more easily, so long as you create those ticklers and reminders. And the more often you check into a case, the less likely, you will be able to, the less likely you're going to be to miss something important. So from an ethics standpoint, that's really important. But it's also important from a client management standpoint. What I tell people to do is set up a process in your firm where you're going to contact all of your active clients every 6 weeks by phone. Actually talk to them. Reach out and talk to them. And attorneys always tell me, oh, but what if I have nothing to say to them? Well, that's not a problem. Clients love it when you just call in. Remember when you got those clients on board to your firm in the first place and you said to them, I care about your case very much. I'm a lawyer who is going to work hard for you. And then you're the lawyer who only talks to them when they have a bill that they need to pay. Well, setting up ticklers, reminders, and a standing tickler to contact all of your active clients every 6 weeks is a great marketing hedge, because you get to talk to your clients, you get to see what's going on. Maybe they have some information that's relevant that they would not have called you with necessarily, but when you're on the phone with them, they're willing to volunteer that information. If you can set up those reminder calls, it's also going to force you to look at the file, because you're a lawyer, right? You're anal retentive. You're not going to talk to a client before you look at their file. So this is also serving as another malpractice check-in, which I think will be tremendously helpful also. So the calendar management side of things are really important. Now, the better organized you are, the faster you'll be. The happier your clients will be, the more work you'll get done, the more time you'll have for your family and friends. So this is all good stuff, right? The more efficient you can be, the better off you are at a number of levels. So now we're going to talk about 4 specific applications where you can ramp up the process in your firm to get more efficient. But before we do that, as I said before, Abacus Data Systems is sponsoring this webinar. So if you are going to ABA Tech Show, and if you're not, you should really register, because it's a great opportunity to network with people, to learn about technology. Visit Abacus at booth 100, get a demo of their product, and there's all kinds of swag available, and you can enter for a chance to win an iPad Mini 4. Now, who doesn't want an iPad Mini 4? So check out Abacus at booth 100. Now let's get into the specific processes, and this is what I'm going to spend the rest of the time on the webinar talking about. I'll do another 10 minutes on this, and then we'll jump into the Q&A session. So we're going to talk about 4 things. We're going to talk about going paperless. We're going to talk about developing an elevator pitch. We're going to talk about financial management, and then we're going to talk about staff involvement, staff support. So everybody wants to go paperless. And I will tell you, there are many firms I talk to who the issue they have with going paperless is they're just not ready to take the plunge. And sometimes that involves issues of they don't want to move to the cloud. And I'm not going to address that specifically, but if folks have questions about it, feel free to ask me in the Q&A period. But I know I've talked to firms, large firms included, who have everything scanned, and they have a process in place for scanning everything, but they just can't pull the trigger to throw away their paper documents or dispose of their paper documents. And it's a psychological thing in a lot of ways, so it's tough to get over that hurdle. Some people like to have the tactile sensation of holding paper. And if you do like that, then you can always print up a copy of your electronic document. But let's get into what you need to process a paperless office, if you're starting from scratch, let's say. So there are 3 things you need to start a paperless office. The first is a scanner. You need a scanner of some kind to actually scan your paper documents and make them electronic in the first place. There are a number of options in play here, but I find that lawyers really love the Fujitsu ScanSnap, which comes with Adobe Acrobat, which is a fantastic PDF conversion program. But you need a scanner of some kind. You want, depending on your practice and how many documents you're going to be scanning at once, let's say, you want to make sure that you get a scanner that's fast, They could do double-sided scanning, not a color scanner if you need that. Something that's accessible with a Mac, say, if you're not a PC attorney. But you want to have a scanner in place. You want to think about having a scanner that you could take with you places. Say you're a real estate attorney, for example. If you have a tiny scanner that you could take with you to a closing and you could scan everything on the fly, well, that's tremendously advantageous because then you're not sitting there twiddling your thumbs looking at these documents, taking them back to the office, and then scanning them after the fact. Now, if you have a large enough office and enough people involved, it probably makes sense to lease a scanner. But for most solo and small firm attorneys, having a remote scanner that you can pick up and carry with you is really valuable. So first thing you need is a scanner. And preferably you want that scanner to run what's called OCR, optical character recognition, because otherwise it's just an image of a document. And what you really want is the text of the document to be rendered. If you can get that text rendered, then you'll be able to convert it to other formats like Microsoft Word so you can edit it. So step two, thing two that you need is Dr. Seuss' birthday today. So I'm talking about thing one and thing two. So thing two is a PDF conversion tool of some kind. People love Adobe Acrobat, but there are a number of other products out there as well, including free products. And there's a company called Nuance that has a tool called Power PDF, which is fairly similar to Adobe Acrobat if you want to save some money. So that system is going to be able to access those PDF documents that you scan, and then you'll be able to edit those documents. You'll be able to create forms out of PDF documents. You'll be able to apply encryption with PDF, with a PDF conversion tool, and then you'll be able to convert it out to spreadsheets, documents, and then actually edit those documents in a native format like a Word document, which you wouldn't be able to do. You wouldn't be able to convert that out without a PDF conversion tool. Three, what you need is a place to store your electronic documents. So this is thing three. Some people are using a server to do that. Some people are using cloud drives or cloud software to do that. But you need a place to store your stuff. Then you need to define a folder structure and naming conventions. So once you've found this place to store your stuff, it's just like having a paper folder. You need to be able to then find that stuff later on. So you need to have a folder structure in place with subfolders and then a naming convention. And at a very basic level, you want to have a naming convention that starts with a date, because that will automatically allow your documents to default to chronological order. So if I was saving this webinar today, this PowerPoint today, I'd call it 2016-03-02 ABA webinar. Very easy to do. And your scanning system may apply a date for you, which will be very helpful because, again, that saves you some time and allows you to become more efficient. And for the naming conventions, it doesn't so much matter how you name things. The key component is that everybody in your firm is going to be naming things the same way. Because if somebody's on vacation, somebody's not available to work on something at a particular time, you need to be able to find that information if you're subbing for somebody or if the person you can ask about the information isn't available. So often I see firms developing like a firm style guide to help with that so that everyone will name things in the same way, and I think that's really important. So let's talk a little bit about elevator pitches and how you develop those. Imagine old Don Draper getting into an elevator next to you and giving you a sweet elevator pitch. You could be Don Draper, or the female version of Don Draper, whoever that would be. So for setting up an elevator pitch, you need, I think, 5 key components. You want to have a practice niche of some kind, because it's very hard to sell anything that is generic these days, just because there's so much competition and consumers are more savvy than they've ever been before. Nobody's going to give you work because you do 10 different things. They're going to give you work because you're an expert in divorce practice. Imagine somebody trying to refer something to you and saying, oh, this person does like a bunch of stuff, I'm sure they can help you, versus this person is an expert in divorce. This is all they do. This is who you need to talk to. Very different play. And when you're presenting yourself, you have to have some idea of what your niche is so that you can sell it to somebody else. You got to be short when you're delivering an elevator pitch, but yeah, you have to also be pithy. You have to do something unique and compelling. So remember, I said before, there are divorce lawyers out there who have business cards that rip in two. Well, I knew of a divorce lawyer who his whole sales pitch, his whole elevator pitch was when somebody asked him what he did, he said, "I render asunder." Short, pithy, memorable. That's what you need. I think you have to practice as well. So when you're setting yourself up to try and develop an elevator pitch for business, you want to practice reading. You want to practice saying it to people. Practice in the mirror. And the other key piece of this is what happens when somebody says something, right? You want people to respond to you, but what happens when they do respond? I think a key component here is developing what I call first lines. So you have your elevator pitch, and then maybe you know that you're going to get 3 or 4 types of follow-up questions. Have those responses rehearsed and ready to go also. You also want to be able to have non-work related conversations with people. If you end up starting by talking to someone and you're not talking about your business, we're in America. People are obsessed with work. So somebody's going to ask you, what do you do? And so you want to be ready to launch into an elevator pitch or an elevator speech generating from a non-work related conversation if you have to. And then you always want to go out on a high note. And one of the ways you go out on a high note is you have a call to action in place of some kind. You want to make sure that somebody is going to take another action, email you, set up lunch with you, call you, and you want to start that process. Here's my business card. Give me a call sometime. Hey, I'll send you an email and we can set up lunch. I'll send you that document or article I was talking to you about. All good stuff, all things that are going to generate some type of action on the person you want to talk with. And the other thing too about elevator pitches that I think people overplay is nobody's ever going to like have a 60-second conversation with you and then be like, oh, let me give you all my business before we get off of this elevator or before we end this like short conversation. The trick is to get them to do something else so you can have a follow-up conversation, because the sales cycle is potentially longer than that, probably longer than that. So let's talk a little bit about financial management. I think there are 3 things you can do within your practice that many law firms don't do that would allow you to have some advantage over other attorneys from a financial management perspective. I think you want to have key performance indicators that you utilize of some kind. Now you can search online and you can see what the big firms do as far as this is concerned. You can copy some of those. But for small lawyers, they have a lot of data available as well that are not rendering. So you've got information about your clients and the work you do for those clients. So you want to figure out what are the key performance indicators, what are the analytics of your firm, so that you can utilize that data to make decisions rather than making ad hoc decisions. The next thing is I think you want to have your trust accounting in place, especially your reconciliation. If you don't do the trust account reconciliations or don't do them effectively, there's ways to manage that via software. And also providing clients notice about those things. You want to have processes in place for this. So if you're asking clients for evergreen retainers, what's the process for asking that? If you're sending out bills on a regular basis, which of course you should be, how do you ask your how do you memorialize the trust transactions that have taken place in that period of time? And when you're sending out your final bill, do you include a final tally of the trust transactions on that case? You want to have processes in place for all these things. So I got 1 minute left, and I want to talk briefly about staff. You got to get buy-in from your staff. Otherwise, they're going to be looking at you like this. You want to make sure that the people you have on your team are involved in the decision-making process in some way. Not that they're making decisions, that's up to you to do if you're the managing partner, but that they're involved in the decision-making process. So one of the things I like to talk about is using staff to help you with tech support. So with a lot of products that are out there, you're potentially paying a decent chunk of money for tech support. How do you get around that? Well, one of the ways you get around that is to get buy-in from your staff and to help them train everybody on how to use technology. So there's 3 particular things you can do to help them do that. The first is you can include your staff in the vetting process. If there's a 30-day trial for a new technology, allow them to sit in on that trial, ask questions, and talk with them, have them talk with you about their impressions. If there are staff meetings, allow people on your staff to lead trainings about how to use new technology. Set up special committees if your firm is large enough for examining new technology opportunities and put staff members on that. And allow them to have sub-meetings that they run themselves. All of that will get people invested, get them bought in on what you're doing. And if you've got some people out there who are real rock stars with technology, who can help others, then you're not necessarily having to pay for an expensive support package, and you can use your internal resources to help you out. Of course, the problem most lawyers have with this is that it forces you to give up or release some level of control, which is problematic. If you want to read more about this, we've got several posts of the Abacus Law blog that you can look at. We've already got one up about going paperless. Already got another one available about building the elevator pitch. And coming soon, we're going to talk about finance and developing those internal support structures. So check that out.